and he said, I just got turned down at the bank for a car loan. Well, Reuben was he liked cars, he liked fast cars, he liked motorcycles, all these things. And he had gone to the bank to get a loan for a Mustang Mach 3. I think that's the model that was out back then. And they turned him down. They said he didn't have the credit to buy the car. And Reuben said to me, he said, Steve, I make plenty of money. They shouldn't have turned me down. I should have been able to buy that car. I said, well, you wanna let me ask you a few questions. And I said, okay, Reuben, first of all, tell me what your income is. And so he told me his income, all the ways he makes money. I said, all right. I said, now tell me what your obligations are. And he told me what his rent was. He told me what his utilities was. He told me what his payment was on the car that he currently had. He just told me all the different things that I asked him. He was pretty good about it. And I said, now, Reuben, tell me other things that you spend your money on. And I started listing things: beer, alcohol, cigarettes, whatever, snacks. So he answered all those questions. And I said, Reuben, you make plenty of money. You shouldn't be in this situation. You ought to be able to get the financing to buy that car because you make plenty of money. And he goes, well, what do I need to do so that I can get that loan? And I said, well, I know exactly what you need to do. He goes, well, will you help me? And I said, Reuben, I told you that it should be easy for you to get yourself straight with your finances so your credit improves so you can get that loan. But I'm not going to be able to help you. Well, Reuben at that point was like, what do you mean you can't help me? Why aren't you going to help me? And I said, because I'll tell you, Reuben, you got the discipline because you're a martial arts instructor. I know that. But the problem with you, Reuben, is you never listen to anybody. You're one of these people that goes through life just doing things the way you want to do things. You get upset with anybody that doesn't agree with you. And basically, you are just your own worst enemy. And I won't be able to help you because I can tell you right now, you're not going to listen to me. Let me just say this, a little aside from the story. When I go to prisons all the time, when I get to that part about Reuben not listening, I ask the question, does this sound like anybody in the room? Is there anybody in here that's just so used to doing things your own way because you don't trust anybody and you don't really respect people enough to take their advice even though they may be expert at something? Well, that usually strikes a bell, rings a bell. But anyway, when I told that to Reuben, he said, no, I'll do whatever you tell me to do because I want to get out of debt. I want to buy that car. Excuse me. So I said, all right, Reuben, listen. If you will do exactly what I show you need to do, then I'm willing to do it. And Reuben said, I'll tell you what, Steve. If you help me do this, I will train you up through brown belt without a contract. And that had a value of like $800. So I was incentivized to try to work with Reuben, but I made it real clear to Reuben that he's got to listen to me. So he said, how long will it take? I said, Reuben, if you do what I show you, I believe that you'll be able to go back to that bank in 6 weeks and you'll be able to get that loan. So here's the point. Reuben said, okay, and here's what I told him he had to do. I said, Reuben, I want you to start paying attention to what you spend money on. I want you to keep track of every single penny that goes through your fingers every single day. I want you to just know everything about your spending habits and your behavior. He said, all right. So I gave him little pointers on, like, write down things on notes and keep your notes in one place and then consolidate them and write them down. Well, Reuben got really, really good at it. Like I said, Reuben was very disciplined and he was motivated. Reuben did a masterful job of keeping track of every penny that he did. he had a lot of little debts out there, so we got those paid off really quick. And one of the things that I showed him, he spent more money on snack food. Right next to the karate school was this little like grocery, and he would be over there 3 or 4 times a day buying snacks. I want to tell you something really quick here. If you've got a high school student working a summer job, or this might relate to you, a lot of people that work construction jobs, they go to 7-Eleven at the end of a day in the summer, and they buy a 64-ounce big gulp. $3.27, I think, is about what that thing costs. And they worked hard all day. They're making good money. They want to save money, though, for something that's important to them. So we get into a higher level here is to learn that if you get more efficient about handling your money, you can set goals for things that you want to do with your money, and you can not waste your money on things that aren't your priority. But that's down the road. But here's what I'm saying. So if a person working a summer job, say for 3 months, is spending $3.27 a day on a big gulp at 7-Eleven, do the math. That's $16.30 or so a week. That's basically $65 a month, $195 in the 3 months during the summer. Well, if that person does like I do, I've got a little thermos cooler that my wife puts an ice pack in and packs me lunch, and you can go to Costco or somewhere or grocery and buy water bottles, or even if you want the sodas, you can get them for a whole lot less than $3.25 a day. My point is that just like Mary curbing her canteen spending from $160 a month down to just $50 and getting very disciplined about how she spends her money, if you start seeing it on paper and you start realizing that you will be able to do things with the money and set goals and achieve those goals, your life will get a lot easier. So my point today is basically that if you start handling your money with a disciplined approach, stay focused, don't do things that aren't in your budget, all of a sudden you'll start to accumulate some savings, and you won't be making such split decisions sometimes. Okay. But what I want to go back to Ruben is this. Ruben was absolutely wonderful in his discipline, in his desire, and that's the secret here. You got to know what you want, and you got to just have that desire. You got to want it, just like Lisa Davis said last week about how she can run like that. She wants it. She wants it. So when you want something bad enough, and it's a priority, and you realize that you can achieve that goal by staying focused and disciplined, it'll happen. And so Ruben, I gave him 6 weeks that we could get this straight. Well, Ruben went back to the bank in 5 weeks, not 6, 5. He had paid off 5 or 6 of these little $150 small debts that he had floating around out there, this credit card or that credit card. He went back to his banker, and his banker was overwhelmed with how he had cleaned up his situation. He got the car loan, and I'll never forget the day he drove up to the karate school with the convertible, with the top down, pulled up in front of the karate school and beat this horn at me and said, "Hey, Steve, you like my new car?" Yeah, it was. That's a good story. So what I'm really trying to say here is a lot of things. It takes discipline. It takes desire. But you really have to use practical tools to do these things with. And so I just really want to talk another couple of things here. Everybody in life has opinions. And some of those opinions get a little more sophisticated, and they call them theories. You can go to most any kind of bar somewhere and sit down next to somebody that's just having a conversation over a beer, and they're going to tell you what their theory of life is. Well, a lot of people, though, have a theory, but they can't prove their theory. It's just talk. And what do we all say? Like, talk is cheap. Well, I'm going to give you one of my theories, but I'm going to prove it to you. And here's how it goes. My theory is this. The longer lead time a person has to deal with any situation, the higher the probability or the likelihood that they will have a positive outcome. All right, let me let that one sink in for a second here. The longer lead time, the more time you have to deal with the situation, the higher the probability that you're going to have a positive outcome, reach a successful solution. Now here's what it means, and then I'm going to prove it to you. And I guarantee you that I can prove it to you. It basically means this. If you're out there living a life where you've been beaten down, your personal life is a struggle, you have a lot of hardship, you've got medical problems in your family, you don't make quite enough money, you're already working overtime, it seems like every time you almost get ahead, something breaks, and whatever money you were trying to save towards something that you needed it for has to be spent on something else. Your credit's gone. You haven't handled your finances very well because you just haven't been able to manage your money effectively. And for all practical purposes, you feel like you're in a situation that you'll never be able to get out of. Well, that's the worst thing that can happen to you, because once you start believing that that's who you really are, it's going to be very, very difficult to get out of it. But again, there are people out there, myself, Jeff, many others, that are there to try to show you that it will get better. Remember, Right Thinking Foundation's basic byline is don't quit, plan ahead, it will get better. So here's the reason why it will get better, and then I'm going to prove to you why my theory is true. It'll get better because you'll have more options to choose from. And that is a very critical thing in life, is to give yourself many options, many choices. When you're down to where you only have one thing and one thing only that you can do, it might not be good. So the more options that you can open up for yourself on how to deal with something, the better it could be. One of the things I always ask people when I do my small business class, my business plan class, the reason that you need to do a business plan, and it's true in your personal life, my whole program here is that I'm taking a 45-year business career and transitioning it into personal finance for people, taking successful principles that are used by all businesses about cash flow management. That's really what it comes down to, is knowing your money and knowing where it's coming from and where it's going, and making sure that you have advanced lead time so that you can better deal with situations without maybe spending something that you shouldn't have spent and not knowing it until it's too late. So here's what we're getting at here. When you have more options, you can do better with the decision that you make. And as I was saying in the business plan class, the question I like to ask is, before you go into business and risk everything you've got, get yourself into a business that takes a lot of your savings and all of the money that you've got, and you get into it, and then you find out after you get into it that it can't succeed because of something that you hadn't realized, wouldn't you rather lose all of your money in a Monopoly game, a board game, than in real life where once you've lost it, it's going to be very, very hard to recover from it? That same thinking is true for your personal budget. If you think ahead, look before you leap. If you think ahead before you do things, sometimes you'll see things that wake you up. Oh, if I do that, this is going to happen, or I won't have this to do this. Go back to the guy that didn't pay his Petco bill, and he spent his paycheck too much of it over the weekend because he didn't put